By the time the 2012 series reached the end of the Shredder arc, the stakes had never been higher. Characters were falling, alliances were shifting, and it was clear not everyone would survive the chaos. The Shredder had just suffered his most humiliating defeat, and this left the Foot Clan with a debilitated leader and open to a takeover. To do this, Karai brought back her friend from Japan, a fierce kunoichi with a flair for illusionism. But was it wise to introduce such an eye-catching character this late in the show, and during its most climactic arc? Join me today as I explore the story of Shinigami and her role during the show's darkest hour. In the show's version of Japanese mythology, Shinigami are powerful deities associated with death and destruction. Perhaps inspired by that folklore, Karai's friend from her time in Japan chose to name herself after them. Shinigami wasn't an ordinary kunoichi. She relied on practical magic and carefully crafted illusions to deceive her opponents. Her greatest weapon in battle was hypnosis, achieved through her hypnostones, ancient mystic gems passed down in her family for generations. She even owned a cat, which she sometimes used to create the illusion that she could shapeshift. But perhaps the most striking aspect of Shinigami was her design. She had a punk goth aesthetic that made her look almost like a teenage witch. With a bat-winged cape, clawed gloves, and crescent-shaped blades that echoed the moon, she carried a distinctly nightmarish presence. One of her hypnostones was embedded at the end of her kusarigama, which she could alternate between a crescent blade or another stone, depending on the situation. And despite her dark appearance, she shared a playful sense of humor with Michelangelo, which is why the two occasionally made an unexpectedly fun team. After the Shredder's defeat at the hands of Splinter, Karai saw an opportunity to restore honor to the Foot Clan. She wanted to dismantle Orokusaki's empire from the inside. To do that, she brought her old friend Shinigami from Japan. As a test of loyalty and a formal introduction to the new version of the Foot, Shinigami ambushed the Turtles and April with one simple objective: bring back one of their weapons to Karai. She succeeded, returning with April's Tanto. That encounter tipped the Turtles off. They realized this mysterious kunoichi was working for someone at the old Foot Lair, and that's how they discovered Karai's plan. But despite her intentions, Karai's rebellion didn't go unnoticed. Tiger Claw, Razar, and Fishface struck back. During the confrontation, Tiger Claw managed to overpower Shinigami, leaving Karai with little choice but to seek help from the Turtles. After reluctantly joining forces, they destroyed one of the Foot Clan's major weapon stockpiles. And somewhere along the way, Shinigami and April finally settled their differences. Leonardo, however, went a step further. He aligned himself with Karai's mission to cripple the Shredder's organization, a decision that directly conflicted with Splinter's teachings about avoiding revenge. To strengthen their position, Shinigami recruited mercenaries from Japan to reinforce Karai's faction of the Foot. Even so, their campaign was an uphill battle. Karai and Shinigami managed to weaken the clan's resources, but they were constantly outnumbered by Tiger Claw, Bebop, Rocksteady, and the Foot elites. Time and time again, the Turtles had to step in. And it was after one of those missions that Karai reached a difficult conclusion. Dismantling the Empire wasn't enough. If the clan was ever going to be restored, she would have to confront the Shredder. When the Shredder returned as a mutant, Karai and Shinigami quickly realized they were outmatched. During their confrontation, the Super Shredder knocked Shinigami unconscious and threatened to crush her unless Karai abandoned her crusade. He then used Karai as bait to lure Splinter and the Turtles into a trap. While Karai managed to free herself, it had become clear that the Super Shredder was too much to handle by herself. With their base compromised and nowhere left to regroup, Karai and Shinigami sought strength in numbers. they moved into the Mighty Mutanimals lair in the Bronx, hoping to up their game. But Shredder was done playing games. After discovering their location, he ambushed them, bringing the entire structure down with everyone still inside. The Turtles rescued Karai, Shinigami, and the Mutanimals just in time, but the collapse left Karai severely injured. As the dust settled, Splinter asked Shinigami to stay by Karai's side until the ambulances arrived. Shinigami later recovered enough to attend Master Splinter's funeral in Northampton. Even in the midst of loss, she remained at Karai's side, and thanks to their tracking of the Footbots, they were able to give the Turtles the last piece of information they needed to take down the Super Shredder. After the death of the Super Shredder, the war for the Foot was far from over. With Karai recovering in the hospital, a new challenger stepped in. Hattori Tatsu, Saki's former second-in-command from Japan, returned to New York to claim leadership of Karai's branch for himself. Tatsu possessed the Kuro Kabuto, the Shredder's helmet and a symbol of authority that was essential to ruling the clan. Recovering it immediately became Karai and Shinigami's top priority, especially because Tiger Claw needed that same helmet to resurrect the Shredder. Outmatched on their own, Karai and Shinigami turned to the Turtles for help and went after Tatsu to reclaim the Kabuto. But the situation grew even messier when it was revealed that Karai had secretly ordered the ninjas she had taken from Tatsu to assassinate him, a decision that backfired spectacularly. In the ensuing battle, Shinigami teamed up with Michelangelo against Tatsu. Despite their coordination, the swordsman proved far more experienced. It ultimately took a combination of strategy and deception from Leonardo and Karai to bring him down. But victory was short-lived. Before they could secure the Kabuto, the demon Kavaxis appeared, killed Tatsu, and claimed the helmet for himself. The fallout was severe. Shinigami and Casey were left heavily injured, forcing them to be rushed to the hospital. During their recovery, the Shredder would return from the Netherworld and eventually be sent back to the afterlife. With the Shredder finally gone and Tiger Claw no longer pulling the strings, Karai was at last able to begin restoring honor to the Foot Clan. Instead of waging war from the shadows, she and her followers returned to the streets, targeting criminals like the Purple Dragons and attempting to reshape the clan's image. But their final major challenge came from an unexpected source: the arrival of the Footbots from the 1987 universe. After tracking the robots to an EPF warehouse, Karai and her forces realized they couldn't handle this threat alone and called the Turtles for backup. Inside the facility, Bebop and Rocksteady were attempting to steal a transmat chip. After securing it, they found themselves facing not just one team of Turtles, but two, alongside Karai, April, and Casey. Even with that much firepower, the combined force of the Footbots and Shredder proved overwhelming. The heroes were eventually reinforced by Shinigami, who arrived with additional foot ninjas she had gathered. The battle was intense, but in the end, the villains still escaped with the transmat chip. And that was Shinigami's last appearance on the show. Behind the scenes, Shinigami introduced something new to the 2012 series, what you could call ninja magic. According to Ciro Nieli, her design required multiple sculpted capes to accommodate different poses, along with alternate hair pieces that allowed her face to disappear into shadow. Even at the production level, the team leaned into her theatrical presence. Ciro had long been fascinated by the idea of ninjas using practical magic, not supernatural powers, but illusion, misdirection, and psychological warfare. When the writers realized Karai needed a second-in-command, they decided it would be more interesting to give her someone who wasn't just another skilled fighter. Shinigami would rely on spectacle as much as combat. And combined with her eccentric punk-goth fashion choices, that creative direction made her instantly stand out. The character was created by Ciro Nieli and Brandon Auman, and she was voiced by Gwendolyn Yo, whose performance gave Shinigami both elegance and subtle playfulness. She appeared in the Super Brawl World and TMNT Legends video games. These appearances were a gift to her fans, who got the chance to spend more time with Shinigami after the show ended. One of her fans was writer Jean Luen Yang, who was so mesmerized by the character that he introduced her into the IDW continuity. A topic for another day. The 2012 series was always a strange hybrid, part 80s Saturday morning adventure, part modern serialized storytelling. Because of that, some characters were given the time and space to evolve over multiple seasons, while others arrived already fully formed. Shinigami falls into that second category. A great deal of care went into her design, her abilities, and even her casting. But unfortunately, she was introduced during the final stretch of Season 4, right in the middle of the Super Shredder saga, when the story was already racing toward its climax. As a result, certain details about her remained ambiguous. Ciro described her as a kunoichi who relied on practical magic. But because of her witch-like appearance and theatrical presentation, it's easy to mistake her for a foot mystic rather than a disciplined illusionist. Shinigami wasn't underdeveloped because she lacked potential. She was introduced at a time when the narrative spotlight was already fixed on the fall and resurrection of the Shredder. She entered the story during its endgame, and as a result, she faced enemies at the peak of their strength. This is why she almost always needed the Turtles' help to stay alive. Yet despite limited screen time, she left an impression. Through her design, her loyalty to Karai, and even her playful chemistry with Michelangelo, she carved out a place in the fandom significant enough to earn her a place in the IDW continuity. What are your thoughts on this version of Shinigami? Do you think her enemies were too powerful? Or do you think the writers needed to justify the Turtles' involvement in the Foot takeover arc? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the sewers.